Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on modeling, testing, and simulating decisions in Sparkling Logic Pencil Decision Modeler and Sparkling Logic Smarts. So before we get started, I'd like to just cover a few logistics. Your lines have been muted for the webinar, so you'll need to ask questions using the chat window. You can type a question in at any time, but I'll also leave some time at the end of the presentation and demo for you to ask questions. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Colleen McClintock, and I'm Vice President of Products for Sparkling Logic. And we'll start by just introducing Pencil Decision Modeler, which is a relatively new product for us. And Pencil Decision Modeler is a cloud-based offering that's specifically designed for capturing and modeling decisions. So those early phases in the life cycle of a project where you need to capture your business rules and structure your decision logic. And the tool is designed to be appropriate for business analysts, business professionals, and also for IT. And one of the unique things about the product is it supports a new standard by the OMG. It's a version 1.0 of the standard called DMN, which stands for Decision Modeling Notation. So why do we have a standard for modeling decisions? Well, during the early phases of a project, typically, these types of the business rules behind the decision logic is captured in Word documents or Excel spreadsheets, or sometimes even in requirements management tools. But there are a number of problems with these typical approaches. And the first is that it's very difficult to ensure consistent use of terminology. And of course, when you're documenting business rules and decision logic, being consistent in your terminology is key to actually understanding the decision logic. Another problem is it's very difficult to share and collaborate around these kind of artifacts. And typically it's a team effort to capture and document decision logic and capture and document these business rules. So collaboration becomes very important. You might need to capture this business logic and then have certain representatives, certain stakeholders in the business sign off on that logic or approve it. And the third problem is that when you capture business rules in these traditional ways, you end up with a large number of relatively disorganized rules, and they lack a decision context. So let's look at what we mean by a decision context. So you might have, let's say you're an online retailer, and you might have a business rule in your organization that says that all orders over $100 qualify for free shipping. But there are some problems with this business rule because the rule itself doesn't tell us when we apply the rule or how do we apply the rule. So both of those are supplied by the decision context. So in the context of perhaps placing an order, maybe we apply that rule after they've added all the items to their shopping cart and they're ready to check out. And maybe the way that we do that is by looking at the total amount in the shopping cart, and on checkout, if it's over $100, then we go ahead and give them free shipping, and we don't calculate the shipping charges. So this decision context happens to be really important when you're capturing rules because it provides the specifics for how the rule is actually applied, how and when. So Smarts Pencil is just the first part of the story. In Pencil Decision Modeler, what you're going to do is capture and model your decisions and document the characteristics of your decisions. This includes things like how frequently the decision is made, who is the owner of the decision, what business processes is the decision associated with, and which tasks within those processes. How frequently it's made, how frequently it changes, how long you have to make the updates once it does change. So all these kinds of things you want to capture and document. And then once you've done that, identified your decision and documented some of those characteristics, you can start to build a decision diagram. And we'll look at exactly how you go about doing that. But it starts with the process of identifying the decision and then breaking it down into inputs and outputs and sub-decisions. And then you're going to actually go down within each decision or sub-decision and define some of the business rules or decision logic in the form of decision tables, business rules, or perhaps unstructured text. And this work that you do on modeling decisions in pencil is really iterative. So it's not, it's not moving from the first step to the last step. It's really iterating, doing as much as you can in each step, and then iteratively refining that. And then at some point, you'll have enough of a decision structure and enough representative business rules to feel like you're ready to actually start to test and execute those rules. Because one of the problems that teams typically encounter when capturing decision logic is they put a tremendous time and effort into capturing decision logic in the form of rules, and then they use some kind of a rule management environment where they actually code those rules in the rule language that the executable business rule management system supports. And then, only then, after going through this whole process, do they start to actually test those rules and run them against data. And of course, in that process, oftentimes what happens is they uncover gaps in the logic or problems that they need to go back to the business and resolve. So it really is, this process really is iterative and really works best with an agile approach. So after you've captured a certain representative amount of your decision logic, you might want to move into Smart's decision management product. And in Smarts, what you can do then is move your project from Pencil into Smarts, begin to actually refine those rules into executable rules, introduce data into the environment so you can test and execute that decision logic. You can also, if some of your rules are based on some type of uncertainty in the form of risk or assessing opportunities like marketing type decisions, you may want to use predictive analytics to induce some rules from your data. You can also define KPIs and metrics on the decision so that you can, as you execute your decision against new data samples, you could measure your decision's performance and run simulations against those data samples so that you can be sure when you're ready to deploy your decision that it will have the performance or the outputs that you expect. And then finally, after you've done this, you're ready to deploy your decision. So what we're going to be looking at today is how Pencil Decision Modeler and Smart's Decision Management work together, and how you can begin in Pencil and then move into Smarts and refine, test, execute, run simulations on that decision logic. So the steps that you go through when doing decision modeling in Pencil, and I've touched on this just briefly, but first of all, you're going to identify your decision. And by identify your decision, specifically, I mean asking what decision it is that you're trying to make. And oftentimes, this decision can be formed or formulated in the form of a question. For example, is this loan eligible, or is this applicant eligible for this loan product? And that would be, you would then identify the outputs from the decision, which would be typically, in this case, an eligibility decision, yes or no. And if no, what are the reasons why they were not eligible? And then from there, you're going to start breaking down, identifying what inputs do I need to make the decision? Well, I need the loan application. And then more specifically on the loan application, which characteristics or which fields in the loan application are we interested in when we're checking for eligibility? And oftentimes we can break this down into sub-decisions. So for example, to know if the applicant is eligible for a specific loan product, we might want to look at, first of all, the applicant's employment and income. Then we might look at their eligibility for a specific loan program that the loan product is a part of, and so forth. So you'll be doing this work in Pencil. And so once you identify your decision, you're going to create a project in Pencil and start creating that decision model with the top level decision. So in our example, is this applicant eligible for this loan product? Then you're going to capture the characteristics of the decision. How frequently is it made? How frequently does it change? And how long do you have to make the change? Who's the business owner of the decision? all of those sorts of characteristics. Which processes is it a part of? Which tasks within the process? And then you're going to do what I described earlier, identifying the inputs, subdecisions, and drilling down into the actual business rules or decision logic. And again, you'll be doing this iteratively. So that's just a very high level description of how you go about the process of decision modeling. And to learn more about the decision modeling approach, I've provided a couple of links. The Decision Model was a book written several years ago by Barbara Von Hall and Laurie Goldberg from KPI, and they basically introduced this decision modeling practice to the industry, and the practice of decision modeling really took root. And they use a slightly different notation than the DMN standard, but nonetheless, the book will familiarize you with the concepts and the approach. Another resource is Business Rule Solutions. They also provide several white papers on how to go about what they call decision analysis. Again, uses a different notation, graphical notation, than the DMN standard, but the concepts are absolutely applicable. So for the methodology and how you go through this process of creating your decision model, those are two really good resources to reference. So what we're going to do now is actually take a look at how we go about doing this using, first of all, Smart's Pencil, and then Smart's decision modeler, Smart's decision management environment. So the demo that we'll be giving is going to be an airline awards demo, a very simple project. And the purpose of this project is to compute award points for recent flights that frequent travelers have taken. And this is going to be a very simple decision. So the rules are that we're first going to compute the base points, and the base points are for long flights, those that are over 500 miles, we're going to award base points equal to the actual miles flown. For short flights, those that are less than or equal to 500, we're going to award a minimum of 500 points. And then we're going to compute some bonus points. And the bonus points are to award first-class passengers 2 times the base points. And for business class passengers, we're just going to award 1 time the base point, or just the base points themselves. And next, we're going to compute the promotion points. And the promotion points will be those special promotions that we're running. So for example, if the traveler took a flight to New York in June of 2014, we're going to award 150 points. Also, we have another promotion, and that is for our Florida summer special. Any trip to Florida during the summer, that is from June to August of 2014, we're going to award 200 points. So that's basically what we'll be doing in the demo. And now I'm going to share my screen and we'll take a look at this project in Pencil. So give me a moment to share my screen. Okay, so now you should see that I've logged into Smart's Pencil and I've been taken to the home page. And on the home page, what I can see is all of the projects in my workspace. So the project we're going to look at is this airline awards project. And if I open the airline awards project, I can see that I have one decision model in the project, and that is to determine the total award points. And the total award points are they're actually computed by adding up the base, bonus, and promotion points for which the flight is eligible. So let's open this decision model. And as you can see, we've already constructed this decision model for you, and I'm just going to walk through it. So at the top level, we have this top level decision called Determine Total Award Points. And Determine Total Award Points, if I look at the Properties tab, has inputs of the bonus points, the promotion points, and the base points. And we also may have the promotion name. And the promotion name is just if there was any special promotion, we want to make a note of which one applied. And then the output from this decision is those total award points. So I'm also going to capture and document the characteristics of this decision. So starting with the name, a description of the decision, the volume refers to how frequently the decision is made, the frequency, how frequently the decision logic changes, and in this case, it might change monthly due to those special promotions. The latency is how much time is allowed to make and deploy changes to this decision logic. And in this case, we have 1 to 2 weeks to make and deploy those changes. And we also have additional characteristics that you can capture and document based on your decision. And these are things like what if you were to phrase the decision as a question, how would you phrase it? And in this case, how many award points should be assigned for this flight? I can also document the allowed answers if it's applicable. And in addition, I've got additional characteristics that I can capture and document for my decision. So this is just data that will help you determine how to automate the decision. It does define additional requirements when you go to decision automation. It also helps you to determine priorities. When you look at and capture and model decisions, you can determine whether or not there's very much payback to actually automating that decision. So for example, decisions that benefit from automation are typically those that are high volume, that change frequently, and that you don't have much time to change. So these 3 characteristics are very important when you're capturing decisions and determining which ones are good candidates for automation. So starting at this top level decision, that was the first thing that we captured by identifying the decision itself, and then what are the inputs and outputs to the decision. Now, when we identified these inputs, the base points, the promotion points, and the bonus points, I might have first captured those as simple inputs to the decision. And you can add these inputs to the decision by clicking on one of these boxes like so. So in this case, I've added a new of input data to the decision. And if I don't want that, I'm able to delete it, also using that control wheel. So once I have an input, so let me go ahead and add that input back again. Let me add an additional input, and then I'm going to just move it over here. I'm also able to take that input and say, well, actually, when I added base points as an input, really that was actually a sub-decision, because base points is something we need to compute based on flight mileage. So I'm able to say that I want to turn that into a decision, and Pencil generates a new decision node for me. So this is the way you go about using this control, building this decision model. And you're breaking down each decision into a series of sub-decisions or actual input data to make that decision. And as you do that and document those inputs and outputs, so for example, if we look at base points, we can see that the input to base points is actually the flight mileage. If you remember our rules for long flights and short flights, for those flights that are over 500 miles, then we're going to add the flight mileage. And for those that are under 500, we're going to assign actual only anything under 500, we're just going to go ahead and give them 500 points. So I just identified first that flight mileage was required to determine the base points. And we know that those base points are going to feed into 2 decisions, the bonus points and the award points. And then I'm able to actually, on this decision, I'm actually able to define my decision logic. And in this case, I chose to define it as a simple decision table. And here I can add new rows to the table. I can add new columns if I want to add new inputs. I can remove rows and so forth, move things around. So I'm able to actually construct the table, the decision logic, and capture the rules directly in the product. Now, as I'm doing that and identifying these inputs to my decision, what's happening is I'm capturing all of that in Glossary. So the Glossary, if I organize my Glossary by category, you'll be able to see that I've defined, these were added by accident, these two, when we were playing around adding a new decision. So these I'm just going to go ahead and delete. So I'm going to say remove that one, and then we're going to remove this one too. So what I have in my decision logic is I've got a set of decision outputs. These are things that are computed by the decision. So you can see that base points is one of those, bonus points, which comes out of my bonus points subdecision, and then promotion points, which comes out of my promotion point subdecision. And as I highlight these, for example, as I highlight base points, it will bring up the decision logic in the pane below, and it will also, in the glossary, highlight both the inputs, flight mileage, and the output in the glossary from that decision. And in the glossary, not only do I capture these inputs and outputs, I also can go ahead and define a description or definition for that specific term. And these categories I can assign based on modifying and defining what categories or sections that I want. How do I want to organize my inputs and outputs? And here, I'm able to select from default where new inputs and outputs will be added by default. And then I can recategorize them as either flight data, something that describes the flight that was taken, or decision outputs. Also in my glossary, I'm able to capture additional information. So if I'm going to actually automate my decision and I'm going to look at it in Smarts, there are additional fields that I might want to care about in my glossary. And these are the alias name that the rules will refer to in Smarts, what type it is, and the type can be one of the Boolean, integer, float, double, and so forth. So I select the type, and then count refers to, is it a single instance or is it a multiple instance field? And I can do the same thing at my category level. So I could have a section that has multiple occurrences, a repeated section. So once I define, my glossary is built dynamically as I build the model by either adding new inputs or defining outputs from my decisions, or by adding columns to my decision tables, which would be an input column or an output column, which I would define as I create the table. So if we look at the bonus point table, we can see that our rules here that we've captured are if the flight class is business, then we're going to award just the base points for our bonus. And if it's a first class flight, then we're going to award the base points times two. And promotion points, we've also captured for our New York promotion. And here we just captured, is it in a New York airport, and are the dates of travel sometime in June, between June 1st and June 30th, and the promotion name we've set is New York in June, and we gave 150 promotion points. We also captured our Florida summer special. Here we listed the Florida airports, and the date being from the beginning of June to the end of August, assigned 200 points. So that is everything that was in our requirements, if you remember. I also have a verify button in my glossary where I can run a verification, and this will tell me that no issues was found. And the kinds of things that we'll find is if a field is in the glossary that wasn't used, and those kinds of issues. So certain inconsistencies between the model and the glossary can be found by using verify. So once I'm happy with what I've done, and let me show you one more thing. You can also capture at the decision level, you have the ability to capture your decision logic either as a single rule, a decision table, or simply as text. And here I've captured the rule and said that we're just going to actually compute those total award points, and they're equal to the base points plus the bonus points. And if I expand my window here, you'll see plus promotion points also. And each time I use a term that's in the glossary, I actually get the definition straight from the glossary. So here I can see base points and I see the definition from the glossary. So all of this is, iteratively captured and documented in Pencil. And when I get to the point where I have enough that I think I'm ready to actually introduce data and start to test and execute this decision logic, I can move into Smarts. So one more thing I should show you is that you might notice in certain of these rules, so let's apply promote points, that we've used certain We've documented our decision logic in a certain way. So for example, in destination airport for our promotions, here we just use text and we just said a New York airport. But here on the Florida summer special, we were more specific, and we said we actually listed explicitly those airports that were Florida airports via the airport code, and we put them in these brackets. So if I'm able to specify in pencil what expression language I want to use, and the only one that's imported right now is Sparkle, which is the sparkling logic rule language or expression language that we use in rules. And if you use Sparkle, what that means is we'll be able to generate an actual executable rule. So two things are necessary to move a rule into Smarts easily that actually will execute. The first is add these details to the glossary, the alias, the type, the count, so those additional fields. The second is to specify in settings that you want to use Sparkle as your expression language as opposed to no expression language. And then when we move into to see that we try to take into account these rules and actually make them into executable rules. And if we can't, for example, a New York airport is not executable because I didn't actually list those airport codes. So when we move into Smarts, you'll see what happens with that rule. So let's go ahead and look at this same project in Smart. And when I log into Smart, I'm taken to the home page, and it looks very similar to Pencil, and I can see that my Pencil project, Airline Awards, shows up here. So if I open this Airline Awards project, I can see that I don't have any decision artifacts. So no decisions are defined, no form, and of course no data is available now. So where Pencil appears, where our decision model appears, is if I click on the project icon, I've got this tab Decision Models, and I can see that I have a decision called Determine Total Award Points with these decision steps: base points, determine bonus points, and apply promotion points. And also, there's a glossary that's been created from the work that we've done in Pencil. So I can click here to show this in Pencil if I want to look at the details, or I can say, create the decisions. And this will create, from our glossary, will create a form or a business object model that defines the fields that we'll be using in rules and generate an actual decision based on the decision model that we defined in Pencil. So let's go ahead and do that. And when I do that, you can see now I've got one decision called Determine Total Award Points, and I also have a form based on the glossary that we defined in Pencil. So let's go ahead and open that glossary. When I open the form, it automatically opens the decision for me. And since we don't have any reports right now, I'm just going to hide my dashboard. And the first thing I want to look at is, you can see that we have the sections that we defined as categories in the glossary. So we have our decision outputs section. I can collapse this section and expand it. And then we have our flight data section. And these are all the fields that basically came over from the glossary. And if you put your cursor over the fields, you can see that I've got the definition that transferred over into Smarts. And I also have the data type. So for example, base points is an integer. And the same thing for all of my input data, my flight data, and I can see the flight mileage, the flight class, the destination airports, all of the fields from the flight data section that we actually used in our rules. So let's go back, and now let's come over to the decision pane in Smarts, and let's take a look at those rules. So Smarts actually organizes the decision model into a decision flow. And in this case, what we can see is that the first thing what we need to do is determine our base points. And once we determine our base points, we're able to determine the bonus points. And from the bonus points, we can determine the total award points. We can compute the promotion miles and then determine the total award points. So here, this flow is editable. So if I want to define a stricter order in the way that we do this, so Smarts just lays this out based on the dependencies in the model. I can sequence them in a straight sequence if I want to. So, for example, if I want to determine base points and then bonus points and then promotion miles and then award points, I could simply edit this flow to do this. And I don't have to edit the flow, but it's certainly possible to edit the flow. So now I've got determine base points, determine bonus points. I might want to delete this link here. And the way that it was defined before would work just fine, but this might be a little bit clearer. And then from my bonus points, I might want to go and determine and apply my promotion mileage. So there, I've rearranged the flow. So the reason Smarts didn't lay it out this way, the first is because the decision model doesn't dictate that there is a dependency between bonus points and promotion miles. So we're just going to sequence it that way to make the decision flow a little simpler. Now let's look at some of the rules in this. So if I click on the decision step in my decision flow, it's going to filter to the rules below. So if I look at the determine base points rule, you can see here are the rules in Smarts. And I don't have any errors on these rules, so they all transferred over as executable. This is my rule for long flights over 500 miles and over, and my short flights for flights that are under 500 miles. And my bonus points are for my business and first class passengers, and you can see here that we're either just assigning the base points or we're assigning base points times 2. And then promotion points, here are the promotion rules for the New York and June and Florida special. And then the award points, we're simply going to do the computation to add the base, bonus, and promotion points. So our decision flow really looks kind of like an inverted decision model. And this is because in order to determine total award points, we have already computed all 3 of these sub-decisions. So let me go ahead and hide the flow. And one of the things that we can do is right now we're just looking at the form in Smarts. I can also start to introduce data and test this decision logic. So let's do that. Let's go back to our project tab, and we can see that we've got a decision. We have a form that defines the structure of our data. Let's add a new data sample so that we can begin creating test cases. And let's give it and I'll just call this test data. And Smarts allows me to add it to the decision I'm working on and use the form that was generated from Pencil. So I'm just going to take those defaults. And now I've got this data sample called test data. And test data basically is empty, and Smarts creates one document for me. And then I am able to go in and start actually typing data into Smarts and defining test cases. So let's start by defining a new flight, and let's add a flight to New York so we can test our New York promotion rule. So the mileage in this case will be 2,586 miles, and for the class, let's just say that this was a coach flight, and our destination airport, we'll put JFK, making it one of those New York airports. And then let's make sure we make this flight in June. So let's say that we take it June 10th in 2014. And now that I've added that data, I can go ahead and execute. So let me show all the rules if I can use my as I showed earlier, I can use this decision flow to navigate. If I click on any decision step, it filters to those rules. If I click on the white background, then all the rules are visible. Then I can hide my flow. So when I go ahead and execute, it's going to actually compute for me the award points, all of the total award points based on the base points, the bonus points, and the promotion points. And what we can see here is that the total award points was equal to the flight mileage. And what we also see is there was no bonus because it was coach, and there was no promotion applied. So the other thing we can see if we look at our decision logic is Smarts highlights in these little icons which rules executed on this particular test case that we created. So those with a green icon are the rules that executed on this document. So I'm able to actually apply a filter in my decision logic area, and I can say only show the rules that fired on this case, and I can see that the rule for computing total points fired, and then the rule for long flights over 500 miles executed. So those are the only two rules. So what we're missing is, of course, our promotion rules, because this basically was an airport in New York, and our promotion rules should have applied. So let's use our flow to filter to our promotion rules and take a look at those promotion rules. And if you remember, one of the things that we had in our pencil model was, rather than listing the airports, we just put a text string and said, just describe that, if the destination airport was a New York airport, then, and it was in the month of June, then we wanted to award our 150 points. So let's go ahead and fix this rule. And instead of listing a New York airport, let's go ahead and list the airports in New York, and that would be JFK and LaGuardia, LGA. And that's using the correct SMARTS syntax. So, and instead of equals, I'm going to use the operator in here. So I want to see if the destination is in the list of JFK and LGA. So let's go ahead now with that change in that rule and execute again and see if the rule executes. And when I hit the execute button, you can see now I've got the green indicator that tells me that the rule did execute, and you can see that our 150 promotion points were applied and that the promotion name is provided New York in June. So what you've seen is that I can bring a project over from Pencil. If there are certain errors that are syntax errors, then I can come in and fix those in the rules. In this case, we didn't have any syntax errors, but we had an error that the text string wasn't valid to actually execute the rule. So we came in and fixed the rule, and then introducing data into the product, we were able to test and execute that rule. And I could go on creating test cases by adding a new test case by just adding a document, or I could copy my existing test case, and now you can see I'm on document number 2, and maybe this time I want to describe another flight on my input data. So for example, let's say we have a flight of 843 miles, and the destination airport is going to be, let's make it Miami. And let's go ahead and test our Florida rule. So let's go ahead and execute on this second document. And when I do that, you can see that the Florida Summer Special fired. Now I'm able to add a report to the dashboard. If I want to keep track of the promotions that we're giving out, I can drag this field to the dashboard and create a report. And this shows me that I've got 2 documents in my test data. One of them results in the Florida Summer Special promotion. The other one the New York in June promotion applied. So just by dragging a field to the dashboard, I can immediately get a report. Now, you could go on creating data this way, or if you wanted to introduce more data, the other thing you can do is, if I look at the details view here of the data, I'm able to export this data, and I could export it to a CSV file, open it in Excel, and create more test cases in Excel, for example. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we've got a new data sample already prepared, and so we're just going to select that existing data sample, airline flights, and we're going to bring that one into our environment. So you can import a data sample into SMARTS that is either a CSV, JSON, or XML file. And when I do that, when I specify that file, it's going to actually import the data for me. I've got this new data sample called airline flights. I get messages below that tell me that the import was successful, so I can clear those messages, and then let's open this airline flights file. So in the airline flights file, you can see I've got 29 flights, so still not a large data sample, but larger than 2. So out of these 29 flights that we have, you can see that 23 of them don't have any promotion at all, don't apply for any promotion at all. 3 apply for the Florida Summer Special, and 3 apply for the New York in June Special. And one of the things that I can do also in SMARTS is I'm able to, let's show the flow for a minute. Let's show our flow, and let's filter to our promotion rules. And then I can hide the flow, and there are my promotion rules. And you can see that I've got these heat maps here. Let me show the dashboard again. You can see that I've got these heat maps here on the rule, and this tells me this rule, this is the New York and June rule, executed 3 times for this document group. So 3 times across the data sample. And of course, that's going to match the 3 times in my report. And then I'm able to say, let's filter on documents that this rule fired on, and there are 3 of them. So if I filter on those documents, I'm now able to scroll through just those specific cases where the New York and June rule applied. Wait, let me repeat that. Do that again. Documents, and now it's telling me that only the 3 documents that apply are here, and I can scroll through in each one of them. Those are the 3 that applied the New York and June that are applicable for the New York and June, are eligible for the New York and June promotion. And then I can clear the filter once I've done that. So the filter, this heat map on the rules, will allow me to look at the specific, not only see how many times the rule executed, but actually filter to those specific cases where the rule applied. So now what I might want to do is let's make a change to a rule. Let's first take a snapshot of our current execution. So this is before we make any changes. And we're taking a snapshot so we can capture our dashboard reports and compare before and after changes. And so in this case, let's say that we're going to extend this rule, this Florida summer special. And we've decided that we're also going to give this award to those travelers who make this a trip to Florida in the month of May. So we're going to go all the way from beginning of May to the end of August. And now, once I've made that change, I can re-execute, and Smarts will do a comparison using my before snapshot and my current execution. So I can see that previously I had 23 that did not apply for any promotion. Now we've got 22 because we're now and then now we had another flight in our data sample that was eligible for the Florida summer special. So what you've seen is how I can make changes to rules, take a snapshot of an execution, and compare the results in my dashboard so that I can see how changes in my decision logic affect my decision outcomes. One more thing about the way that the rules come over in Pencil as opposed to when they come over from Pencil. So you'll notice that we always preface with the name of the section in these rules that came from Pencil. And Smarts actually is smart enough to understand if the field name is unique, I really don't need those section names. So the rule becomes a little bit more readable when I get rid of those. So I can just say if the destination airport is JFK or LaGuardia and the date is in June, then my promotion, and again, I can get rid of the section name of decision outputs, and I can also get rid of it there. Then the promotion is New York in June, and the points is 150. So you can see that those changes, those section names really aren't required, but when we bring the rule over from Pencil, we put them there. I can also give the rules more meaningful names here, and I could have done this in Pencil as well, but we used a decision table, so we didn't bother. So I can call this my New York in June promotion, giving that a new rule name. Like so. And I'm also able to capture documentation on this rule if I want to. If I look at the detail view, I can say this promotion is for flights in June of 2014. Like so. And when I go back to my normal view, you'll still be able to see that I do have a specific comment to describe the rule here. So these are the kinds of changes. You may want to clean up your rules a little bit when they move from Pencil to Smarts, make them a little bit more readable. I can also do things like define business terms. So here I have this, if the destination airport is in JFK or LGA, and I could make this a business term. And let's do that. Let's say we want to make this a business. And the name of the business term, let's just call it New York Airport. And then the definition will be as we had it in the rule, if it was JFK or LaGuardia. And we can say here, the list of, so this is any airport in New York. And if I do that, now the rule is changed to make it even more readable. If the destination airport is a New York airport, and the way that when I put my cursor over that business term, you can see the actual definition is JFK or JFK or LGA. And over in my form, you can see that New York Airport has been added under destination airport. And if I execute, you can see that this is actually just a Boolean. And if it is a New York airport, in other words, if the airport is one that's in the list, I can see that the true is checked. So for all New York airports, I can see that I can see which flights are actually from a New York airport. And I can scroll through and find and see that when it's not a New York airport, of course, the box isn't checked, and it is when it's in New York again, and so the condition is met. So by using business terms, this is a way that I can make my rules more readable, and I'm able to define business terms by either adding them directly inside of the form. So if I go into my modify form mode, I could add perhaps another business term. So if I wanted to add one for Florida airports, I can add it this way also. And I can say airports in Florida is my description. And here I can list those airports in Florida. So I'm going to say any airport in this list, and this will be MCO, all the airport codes that are valid in Florida. MIA for Miami, or FLL for Fort Lauderdale. So there we've done it. We've defined this business term, and we've gone about it a slightly different way. And let's see, I have a syntax error here because let me see. I'm not sure what I did wrong there. Oh, I didn't put the whole phrase. So I have to say destination airport here, and I've got IntelliSense editor, so I can just select it and then put the N, and there we go. My mistake. So in the business term, it actually takes the whole phrase, testing to see if the destination airport is in this list. And then I can hide my business term details. And now that I've defined this business term, I can, of course, come over here and modify my Florida rule. So instead of saying, get rid of my section header as before, and I can instead here, I'm able to say destination airport is, and then I can use my IntelliSense editor, and I see the list of business terms that I have on the destination airport, and I can say is Florida airport. So that describes, that gives you an idea of how you can make rules more readable and how you can clean up your rules that come from Pencil and move over into Smarts. And once you're in Smarts, you can introduce data, begin to test and execute those rules, and make changes and run simulations to compare alternative decision strategies. So let's go back to the slides. Okay, so what you saw is how you go about capturing and modeling your decisions in Pencil, how you can build your decision diagram and define your decision logic in decision tables, business rules, or in unstructured text, and then how you can go into Smart's decision management environment and actually introduce data so that you can test and execute that decision logic, and define metrics or dashboard reports so that you can monitor your decision outcome or performance, how you can run simulations comparing one decision strategy to another, or even loading different data samples and comparing your decision logic on one data sample versus another. And then finally, when you're ready to, how you can, we didn't demonstrate this, but when you're ready to, you can actually deploy that decision. So now I'd like to leave just a few moments open for questions. And while you enter your questions, I'd just like to tell you that I'd like to invite you to learn more. You can sign up for a free evaluation of SMART's our Pencil Decision Modeler on our website. Also, we frequently blog about decision modeling and decision management, prescriptive analytics topics, and I invite you to visit our website and read our blog. We also have a newsletter that we periodically send out with announcements of new product releases or happenings in the industry, events we're participating in, or just good information about decision modeling, decision management, prescriptive analytics. And I'd also like to invite you to attend one of our upcoming webinars, and you'll find those listed in the events section of our website. So thanks very much for coming today. And now we'll just take a few minutes to answer any questions you might have.